Okay, folks, so the next thing that we're going to do, as I mentioned here, is I'm going to use my little program description to guide me as I take my next steps through developing my Python program. So I've imported my CSV library because I'm going to be working with a CSV file. The next thing I want to do is I want to actually open the file that I'm concerned about. So the nice thing about Python is that Python was written to sort of read like the English language. Obviously, it's not perfect; it's still programming, so it's there are still quirks and things to get used to, but it is meant to be fairly legible, so that as you literally read a line of code out loud, it is fairly easy to understand what's happening. So first, I'm going to go here, and I'm going to say, by the way, import CSV library. And now I'm going to go down to my next line of code, and I'm going to say, open my September CSV file. Okay, so how do I do this? First of all, I have to give it a name. So we talked a little bit about this, or we'll talk in class again a little bit about the structure of this, but basically anything that I want the computer to remember, I have to give a name. And so in this case, we call these variable names. And so in this case, the name that I'm going to give this is source file. And variable names should be descriptive, just like file names, right? You're going to have, you can name it A, B, C, D, and E if you want. The computer doesn't care, but it's going to be much easier for you if you give these things descriptive names so that you can understand what's happening as you look, as you read through your program. So source file is a good descriptive name because it tells me this is the source of my data. And now if I want to open a file, I use, guess what? The function is called open. And so in here, I need to give it the name of the data file, of the file that I want to open. So there's two things that I need to do. First of all, I need to move the data file that I'm interested in into my target folder. So I have to move it into the Python work folder. And if I come down here to the terminal, I can be sure that it's there, because if I do ls, I can see it right in the line here. So again, that ls command is really handy. It'll show me what's in there. Obviously, I could get the same thing by actually just opening up the folder, right? So the terminal is just a less visual way of navigating our way through the operating system. It works exactly the same way as double-clicking with your mouse or opening folders or right-clicking and choosing new folder. We just view it a different way. So here we are. Here's the name of my file. So I can just use this. I can refer to it in either spot, which actually is going to be easier from terminal right now. And I'm going to say 2016-09 city bike trip data.csv. Now, there's a second piece in here when I say I want to open a file. I have to pass it some parameters that help it understand how to split apart the file. I haven't gotten to the part where I'm telling it yet that it's a CSV. I mean, obviously, there's CSV in the file name, but I'm actually not asking the computer to deal with that fact at this moment. I'm just saying, here's a file name. It could have any extension. The computer isn't going to care at the moment. But what I'm going to pass it is I'm going to pass it this second parameter called RU, or rather the letters R and U in quotes. And basically, I'm just giving this to you as received wisdom. This is going to tell the computer how to recognize the end of a line. So basically, I think I've mentioned to you all that Macs and PCs actually use different invisible characters to end lines sometimes. This RU is basically saying use all of them. Recognize any type of line ending character, not just the Mac or the PC one. And so that's why I pass that as the second parameter. So I've now opened the file, but I want to actually, there's something more that I want to do with it, because I've opened it, and like I said, even though it says CSV here, the computer hasn't paid attention to that yet. So it's a little bit like in OpenRefine, when we could have asked OpenRefine, had we checked that box to interpret the data types of our fields when we were working with the city bike data, but we opted not to do that because it kind of occupied more memory than we wanted to use up. Well, in this case, the open this open function isn't paying attention to what kind of file it is. But now we're actually going to tell the computer. We're going to say, hey, look, this is a CSV file, and I want you to treat it as such. And to do that, we're going to rely on our CSV library. So I'm going to call this CityBike reader. So I'm making a new variable. So I'm naming a new thing. And I'm saying, by the way, I want you to use the CSV library. Okay, so I begin it with CSV. And then I'm going to use something called dictReader. Now, in this case, dictReader stands for dictionary reader, and dictionary is a way it's a method that Python has for associating, basically for creating objects, right? So if you think about it, for every row that we have, there is a column header name like trip duration or start station ID, and you can interpret that for every row, you can say, okay, what's the value of trip duration? It's 271. What's the value of start station ID? It's 2 and 2, right? And so that association is actually equivalent of a key value pair. So those key value pairs that we've actually seen in JSON, when we print these out, you'll see they look exactly like JSON objects. So it all kind of comes full circle. But basically what I'm saying is, look, I want you to interpret this file as a CSV, and I want you to associate the value in every row with the header of that row. So that if I come upon a row, I can say, hey, what is the value of start station ID? And it will tell me. This isn't the only way to deal with it, but it's a very usable way to deal with it, which is why we're going to do it in this case. And actually all I have to say is I want you to take that source file that I just opened, and I want you to make a dictionary reader out of it. Okay, so now I have, I'm going to say, make a dictionary reader out of my CSV. So that's great. Now, if the purpose of my file, again, going back to my summary up here, is to create a new file to write just my start station IDs rows to. So I need to make a new file that I'm going to actually write things to. So this is going to be my output file, I will call it, output file. And now, in order to make something new to write to, this is exactly the way that we would do it if we were working with a traditional text editing program, right? I would go file, I would probably go like file open or file new, which is actually just opening a new blank file, but that I can write in. So in this case, I'm going to say open, and now I can just hand it a file name, right? So it's kind of like going to new, open, and save as all in one. Basically, I say output file open, and then I'm going to give it the name. I'm going to say my start station info, and I'm also going to pass it the CSV parameter because I'm going to be writing a CSV file. But again, just the way I had this special second parameter here, which was R for read and U for universal, as in universal line endings, accept them all. In this case, I'm just going to pass the parameter W, which means write. So I want you to open a file, name it mystartstation.info.csv, and I want you to make it writable. Again, similarly, so I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. So create a new file to write to, okay? And now again, the same way that I actually did a little bit more than just opening, because again, the .csv is in quotations here, it's part of the string. The computer doesn't know that this is going to be a CSV file. I'm going to use my CSV library here to do some extra work and let the computer know that what I would like to write is actually a CSV file specific. And to do that, I'm going to create something called output writer. There. And this is going to be a CSV writer, and I'm going to pass it the name of my output file, right? So basically I'm saying, you open this new file, I gave it a file name that you don't really care about, but by the way, I want that specifically to be something to which I write a CSV, right? Because I could actually write anything to this. I could write, millions of lines of gobbledygook. The computer doesn't care. It will do whatever you tell it to do. It is not clever. Now, one thing that is really handy, and this is one of the reasons why I created why I went through the trouble of creating this dictionary reader up here is because by telling the computer that this is, by telling it to use the CSV library to convert this file that I have opened, right, which I happen to know is a CSV, but the computer doesn't know a CSV until I tell it to convert it, to interpret it as such, as I did here, is that it will automatically detect the header row names. And that's going to be really handy for me because it's going to make it much easier to find what I'm looking for in that file if I know, or rather if my program knows what the column header names are. So this is just something that's built in. So in the process of creating this dictionary reader, one of the things that it produces, that the program will produce automatically, is a property, right? It's actually a list of all of the field names, all of the column names that are available. And this just has the name, the assigned name is field names. So I'm going to test this out by saying print city bike reader.field names. I'm pretty sure it's all lowercase. I'm going to put this in parentheses so it knows to keep it all together. And we'll see what happens. If this works, as I hope, then what I should see here is actually the names of the columns in our city bike data. So I'm going to test this by the way, here's another trick for dealing with the terminal, sometimes called the command line, is if you press the up arrow key, it's going to redo the most recent command that you did. Now, I haven't actually run this program yet, so I'm going to type Python CSV processing, right? I can see the name of my file right there. I know that my data is there, and I'm going to cross my fingers and hit enter. And it looks good. You can see that it's produced a list, right? It's just spit it out right in front of me. It's produced a list of all of the column names in my file. So that is great. What I want to make sure to do is actually right away, I'm going to write those column headers to my output file because, of course, my output file isn't going to be very useful without the column headers. So to do that, I'm going to say output writer, right? So this is my CSV writer. So see, they're related. I use output in both titles so that it's clear kind of what part of the program it's dealing with or what part of the process it's in. But I want to be working always with my output writer now. So I'm going to say, I'm going to make sure to comment this and say, create a CSV writer to take advantage of the tools it offers. Okay, so I'm going to say output writer.write row. Actually, I'm going to double check that. I'm not sure. Sorry, I'm going to do write row. That is the correct one. Now you'll notice that when I do things like this, so for example, write row is a function, is a recipe that is known by the CSV, that exists in the CSV recipe book, right? I can use it because output writer was built from a CSV recipe, but you'll notice that it doesn't turn blue. So, you know, while these editors are really, they try to be helpful in kind of identifying built-in functions so that you know, so that it makes it easier for your file to read, they can't recognize all of them, right? It just doesn't make sense. It's not really possible. So not everything is going to turn blue just because it's a function name. And now, pardon me, the one thing that's important to do, and I'm going to come back and add some stuff to this, is I want to make sure I close my files when I'm done with them. So I've actually told it that I want it to create a new file. I'm going to open my data file. I'm going to create a new file. And by the way, I'm going to write those header rows to it. So I'm just going to make sure that I close all of my files at the end here. So I'm going to say source file close. And I'm going to say output file close. Right, just kind of good practice here. It's not going to ruin anything if we don't have this, but it's a good idea. Say close all opened files. And now, here's the thing. I could actually have done this before. So I'm going to run this again. But this is a great trick. So I'm going to go ahead and list the files that are in my folder. And what do you know? My startstationinfo.csv is there. If I go ahead and open it, I can actually, I'm just going to open this with text edit to make it quicker. And there you go. You can see that this has been successfully written to my own file that I created. So when we come back, we're going to look at adding some data to this.